Is that the motion be agreed to?
Sir.
Honourable Shane Jones.
Tēnā tātou katoa I roto I tēnei ata. Ia tātou e noho nei I roto I te whare pāremata. Ka piripiri, ka whakaputa kōrero. Mō tēnei pire e pāna kia tātou katoa. Aha ko kiri prauri, aha ko kiri tea, aha ko no tēhea pito o te motu. Tā te mea ko te papa tēnei I waihanga ti ai, I whakaiti ai, I whakairongi ai. Ko te kawenata I tū ai tō tātou motu me tōna kāwanatanga arā ko te tiriti o Waitangi. Nā reira, tēnei ahau te tū, I te taha o kuhoa ki te tautoko, I ngā kōrero kua whakatakotongia ki te kapo o te pepa, a tōna wā ka whai pakiaka, ka weu ki te mata o te ture. Nā reira, tēnā no tātou katoa. Sir, I stand to support the amendments outlined by the Minister. The Waitangi National Trust Board, before I speak with obvious affection, sir, for this part of the country, not only because of wanting to embrace our heritage by dint of coming from that part of Aotearoa, but I want to remind the House, sir, in 2006, the then Minister of Heritage and Culture, with the support of the then Prime Minister Helen Clark, explored whether or not the capital base of the Waitangi National Trust Board could be strengthened by an infusion of a Crown grant. I recall being, sir, on the Select Committee, chairing the Select Committee, and it was John Key who posed the question to the acting minister on the day, I think it was Minister Tizard. That then led to some unfortunate rhetoric in and around personalities on this trust board, and indeed from my erstwhile Northern parliamentary colleague John Carter. And at that point in time, the fear was that any changes that took the Crown closer to either providing assistance or other such changes to the Waitangi National Trust Board would weaken or corrupt the original kaupapa laid down by the Governor-General of that time. I think, sir, that the wrong decision was made at that time, and that this Trust Board statute has been well and truly overdue for amendments of this nature. Now, the fact that this group is responsible for I would say the preeminent site in terms of our nation's history and constitutional pedigree, the fact, sir, that the Crown has to date not been able to work very closely with this organisation to ensure that it has the direction and indeed the resources to fulfil what this generation and future generations will expect of it as our multi-ethnicity grows, and we ensure we do not move away from the original kaupapa that led to ordered, settled development in our nation state. So this is a particularly interesting bill because it seeks to blend together some of the leading colonial families, and I'm glad that now there will be parliamentarians in a slightly different way, and a connection with the Office of the Prime Minister and the Office of the Opposition to ensure that the two organisations, the two streams of thinking, sir, whoever the government of the day is, or indeed thinking in Parliament, and the custodians of that site don't diverge. But it's interesting because, sir, the great-grandfather of the current member, list member Tauhenare, was a member, original member of this trust, as indeed was Koroki, as indeed, sir, was the mokopuna of Kawiti. And, sir, that particular appointee, Kawiti, was established as a custodian here, sir, to represent the interests of four families, or four lineages of the Ngāpuhi people. Pōmare, whose mokopuna was Calvin Davis. Pōmare, whose indigenous name was Whetoi. Pōmare, who took his name from the Tahitian king of that time. And in the rather wanderlust ways of the Ngāpuhi, he had settled upon a kaupapa that he was going to go with several ships to Tahiti. The colonial forces, etc. of the time didn't think that was a great idea. But Sir Pomare was also the tupuna who took back to Ngāti Porou their princess, their tapairu by the name of Rangipaia. It was Pomare who went with Hongi, sir, as being the first iwi to get the muskets to settle historic scores. But he came to grief in the Waipa River in Tainui country, and he had been warned by the High Chief Pōroa of Hokianga, who had made peace with the Tainui, do not, the ancestor Te Kanawa, do not make mockery of my peace. And so there's a great story to be told by Henare Tūwhāngai and Ruakupa that once they split the belly open of Pomare, the Tainui managed to get the kernel of corn to grow their gardens. So this is not the stuff of stuffy history. This speaks to the red blood, the liveliness of Māori history as well. So the other ancestors, Tāmati Wakanene. Tāmati Wakanene is the son of Tāpua. Tāpua was the young man, sir, who greeted Cook, not far from the Cavallis. The third, sir, tupuna mentioned here is Honeheke. Honeheke needs no explication. He decided that the flagpole was a source of irritation, and a bit like his great mokopuna Hone Harawira, was rebellious to his core. I do not recall Honeheke having a German connection though, but that's another matter. And so the fourth whānau to be represented, so a little bit of humour, that's the Ngāpuhi style. Kawiti, Pomare, Wakanene, Honeheke. And so that part of New Zealand's heritage is still embedded in this bill. So the creation of the waka is also a story that needs to be properly told, and hopefully through the restructuring of this bill, and I'd say to the Minister over time, perhaps the passage of some material assistance, because this trust went through a bad patch prior to the arrival of Sir Don McKinnon. I have to acknowledge Sir Don McKinnon has done a great job at turning the fortunes of this trust around. They made an unwise decision about a decade ago, and so one bad executive can create all types of tantrums. So I'm so glad to learn that he's remained involved, and indeed they have a fundraising initiative, and the Westpac Bank have continued to offer their support. Because the story of the Ngāpuhi Waka, Ngātoki Matapaurua, a replica of which lies at Waitangi, sir, was the effort of Te Puea, the effort of Ngata, supported by Tauhenare's tupuna, who brought the big logs out of Ngāti Hine. And Sir Hone Harawira and I have an uncle who's recently passed away. He was the last surviving man who paddled that canoe when he went home from St Stephen's School on holiday, sir, Mr Glass Murray. And he told us the story of how they were assembled near Kirikiri, and the Tainui had come forward and were helping them with the drills. But sir, in the great Ngāpuhi tradition, the Hokianga people took offence with this. So they went into the back blocks of Hokianga and built their own waka. And that waka too was called Ngātoki Matapaurua Iti, and it took place under the leadership of the tohunga Ngāpuhi of that time, Mr Rea Kauere, aided by Toki Pāngari. That waka has been restored, sir. It has also graced the waters recently at Waitangi. And I only hope, sir, that that part of the history is embraced as this trust grows and acts as a custodian for future generations, because know this, sir, as the demography and the composition of our population changes, we must fight incessantly to ensure that we do not become untethered from this original narrative, outlined, sir, in the treaty, hopefully, sir, safeguarded and evolved through good stewardship of this organisation. And I feel a lot more confident, sir, as a consequence of these statutory changes, that the organisation will grow to meet the challenges of the time. Kia ora tātou.
Honourable Dr Peter Sharples.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker. Tēnā tātou katoa. Waitangi is a place